So let's get the party started, everybody.
Woo!
Happy Friday. Yay. It's the NerdBrand Podcast. And yeah, it's a Friday. And next week is turkey. And I just saw a documentary about turkey. And did you guys know they make diesel fuel out of turkey juices? You know, this is the abbreviated version of the podcast because we've had audio issues, and I won't say what app failed us, but if you listen to past episodes, which is my way of trying to get people to listen to past episodes. Yes, that's a dirty trick. I understand that. But yeah, that app not jiving, not working out. So here we are on video, just Mitch and I, the core hosts of the cast. John may not join in just because he's busy. So anyways, where things kind of broke down was, we were talking about brands that are being overused. We brought up how we felt like Batman is overused as a property, and Wonder Woman wasn't really given enough love, given that the fact that over the years she's just not gotten a whole lot of movies. I mean, there's really been 2 animated features of her. There's been 1 feature film, another one coming out, 1 video game, and that's about it. That's the entire library of Wonder Woman, whereas Batman, Superman are 50-something games or something ridiculous. And then we talked also about, movies like Star Wars, where everybody's kind of gotten tired of that because Star Wars is trying to make that $4 billion back that I'm pretty sure they've done, but they still keep producing content that I don't think people are they're just kind of like fatigued is the word. So during the whole original podcast where the audio fell apart, which justifies what we're doing now, it was just fatigue, I think. And so now I don't know. We'll see what happens now that Disney Plus has got all them subscribers and what happens on there. So,
Well, I mean, we talked about this in the podcast we already recorded that we can't use, that it's not just fatigue. Sometimes the Bond franchise is a prime example of, if you stray too far from what people are familiar with or have come to know and expect from a brand, it creates a disconnect, and that's when you start to take on water. I mean,
yeah.
And that's a bit different than brand dilution. I mean, I guess brand dilution with Bond would have been if they did Bond, then they spun off other spies in their own franchises from the Bond franchise.
It's kind of like a Jason Bourne shows up and it's like, wait a minute.
Yeah, something like that. So, the eternal question is, how far can you go extending off of a brand before you've become from the core, made the original brand strong?
Yeah. You have to not confuse your audience. People kind of expect, a certain thing. So if Starbucks coffee started doing comic books, I think that would be far out in left field. I think that would probably be a good case of maybe delusion. It was like they're supposed to do gourmet coffee.
But they do. I don't know if they still do, but it used to be you stood there when you stood at the counter, there was a slot of CDs.
Yes, but those were people that they would, work with Starbucks to do that because they knew the foot traffic in the stores, which, with the pandemic right now, I mean, what's that going to look like?
What foot traffic?
Yeah, what foot traffic exactly? And in DC Comics, we mentioned that there's rumblings of layoffs, and that still kind of disturbs me. So there's some audio from the past podcast for the listeners that I'll use. So that's why you're hearing us repeat this and things changing. So we're just having all I can say is hashtag 2020, everybody. And so it's like, it's kind of just surreal to think about not having a DC comic release. Like, you're still going to go to Image. You'll still have them putting out characters and releases, but, and I'm sure they'll do maybe, I think, Superman, but I don't know. John says, what is this, 2007? It's like, yeah, kind of, yeah, no, we had to switch to Skype because, again, another plug for Skype. But yeah, we had to switch to Skype due to the audio technical difficulties. I think Anchor has served its purpose. We're going to have to jump into the arena of Crowdcast or something for the podcast in the future. Stay tuned, kids, after the Thanksgiving holiday. Enjoy your turkeys.
Now,
But
I have a question. I have a hard time believing that DC will just fold up shop for its print comics. I can see them shuttering a bunch of titles.
yeah, and that's kind of, I think that's what will happen because they still have some of the artists and editors on staff, the older ones that his name escapes me, but he's still there. He seems to still have fun. He still has an active Twitter account talking about it. But a lot of the people that were the investors that were putting money into those titles, they're gone. That were kind of making these decisions that I think we all knew were a little silly um,
Well,
with events.
how many Batman titles are there?
Well, and that's the thing. It got kind of a little, DC's always had this issue where it's like since we're talking about dilution, I mean, this is a brand that I feel has kind of gone down the path where it's getting beat to death. I mean, it's overused because brand dilution isn't just, diluting the brand and losing that message. I mean, to me, it's an overuse as well. I think that qualifies for dilution of it because you know, you have fatigued people with it to the point where they just don't care to see it anymore. They just need a break.
Familiarity breeds contempt.
Right. So, give it a rest, give it some time to kind of, settle a bit. And Star Wars is one that needs to do that. Fast and Furious, if you look at them, we talked about that brand or that franchise. I think their pace has been good to not do that. If you've noticed, they don't release, like, I got to thinking about it after we started talking about it in the previous recording that, well, their pacing of releases hasn't been as aggressive as Star Wars, So
Well,
it's
you,
like maybe that's why it's got still legs.
well, the other side of that is you bring in Marvel and you look at the way they have created basically episodic cinematic releases in a way that you had episodic television or episodic miniseries. They've done that with cinema, with theatrical releases, because each of the movies link together. And you don't quite get the fatigue. This is me surmising. I don't think you get the fatigue because each movie, in that it's linked with the a previous release, is still its own thing. There's enough original content to it. There's enough differentiation between the properties that you're not seeing the same character over and over again. You're seeing extensions of a storyline, but you're getting different characters.
Right.
And that's the problem I think with Star Wars, and part of where they went wrong was it's one Star Wars film after another after another. Some are linked back to the original storyline, some are not. Are they all linked generally with the Star Wars universe? Yes. But are there direct connections with other characters and other within the story? Very thin, but not
Yeah.
directly. And not
Yeah.
directly. So I think maybe that's part of where they've gone wrong.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of I think there's going to be a lot of changes with that as we see. We did talk quite a bit about um, Sony and your love of that. Sony is a brand
I
that
just think they're an amazing company. I mean,
they are. They're a brand that has had many extensions, and they have just been able to. They've just got that staying power. They started out. They've always been, I guess you could say, in electronics, but to a degree, they did a color television that went crazy way back in the day before you and I were born. Just for clarification for anybody out there, we're not that old. Um,
well, sort of.
hey, don't
Speaking for
no,
myself.
don't do that. Mitch is not 82. You're
No,
getting sound
no,
like
I am not. I am not.
yeah. But it's like color television, and you had the Walkman, which we were both around for that. I had one of those yellow, big, bulky, waterproof Walkmans that technically you could go underwater with. I
Yeah.
never did it, but I had one, and I took it with me everywhere. And it was impact resistant. And I think that was the reason why my parents bought it for me because they didn't have really a lot of money. So they ended up doing that, and man, that thing I took that everywhere listening to tapes. I was, putting in Van Halen. That's when you had this before MP3 players, kiddies. It's like I had cassettes with me in a backpack, and
Yeah.
it's
And
crazy.
I first year of college, I rode the bus. I used public transit because I had wrecked my car. Um, and every morning, man, I had my Walkman, I had my headphones, I had a couple of uh, cassettes in my bag, and Lord, if I'd had to take that bus ride back and forth to school, I mean, I guess I could have taken some of my comic books or something like that, which I sometimes did, but still, people see you reading something, they want to look over your shoulder. Hey, what are you reading? You got your headphones on, you're listening to your music. People leave you alone.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like a sign to say, hey, I'm doing something busy and don't bother me. But anyways, as a brand, Sony has been, like right now, I think if you hear the name Sony, you hear PlayStation. PlayStation, the ads on that. I love their ads. I just do. I thought Xbox for a while was doing way more ads. But video games are, that's a complete industry that's just billions and billions of dollars are in that. And, they've gotten to the point where some of the graphics and some of the cutscenes coming together just could make a nice movie for some of the franchises we've talked about, and that may happen because of the pandemic. They've got to figure out now how to provide entertainment to us because actors can get sick just like anyone else, and so costs for producing these features has gone up. I've read between 10 to 20%, and that's a lot, for a feature to absorb to try to make the buck back, which is why Wonder Woman has moved now to HBO Max and it's still going to be in the theaters, but I do not believe it will do well in the theaters at all. I know they're trying to break the trend that DC has in the theaters, but unfortunately they have, like many businesses, this pandemic working against them. So I think it'll do fine though on HBO Max, given Zack Snyder's Justice League is almost upon us.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
how many hours of new footage? But it's not a reshoot.
No, it's not a reshoot.
Stop me before I get started again.
Yeah, it's not a reshoot. We know. DC's a brand that is diversified, done a lot of extensions, done a lot of things, and we're seeing it contract right now because of the economy and the pandemic. And sometimes, and that sort of can happen, I mean, these are very uncertain times for a lot of businesses. So, but it's a kind of, when you look at it, like here's a major brand that has shut down its action figures, I believe, line. They have completely gotten rid of and scrapped their online streaming, and which is why they're with HBO Max. And because that happened with Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing is a great series that they were extending it out into to do a character they've never touched. Looks great on television, but has a lot of because there's cussing in it. It was kind of made for an adult audience, but the set was so expensive to store because it was a swampy set with water. And when you're on a lot, I mean, they were like $1 to $2 million a week or a month or something like that to just store the set in between seasons. Yeah, millions of dollars spent to store the set in between seasons was needed in order to, come back and do maybe a season 2 that wasn't guaranteed. And with the pandemic and everything, everybody kind of looked at it and went like, I think we're getting a little thin. And I think that's happened with DC. I think they've kind of, their extensions and everything, I think they've gotten a little thin. There's some properties that I think are overused, like Batman, and I think it's starting to play out to hurt them.
Yeah,
And,
there's something to be said for building an appetite for something for a recurring product. And we keep coming back to film, and I keep going back to James Bond because that was the first big movie franchise. It's like it set the template for how to build a movie franchise. That like 2-year wait, 2.5 year, I think is probably about the average wait between films. They always left you wanting more, and that 2 year in between gives time for it to cook. You get your fix. You go to see the movie. Maybe like me, I tend, if it's a movie I like, I tend to see it multiple times. But it leaves the theater, and there's that anticipation. You know what I mean? It's like kids and Christmas. I mean, that's a great model. Christmas is the perfect model to use to build desire for a product. Keep in mind the way kids feel before Christmas. I mean, and that's sort of how it works with film franchise. The best film franchises, you can't wait to get to that next fix, but you almost enjoy the time in between because it gives you time to enjoy what's coming, because once it's there and gone, it's gone.
I just keep thinking about Charmin. Enjoy the go. You just gotta and just take some time to
Enjoy the don't
enjoy.
go.
Yeah, enjoy the go or the don't go if you yeah. In 2019, he's the former Disney CEO now, but the CEO in 2019 said, "I just think we might have put a little too much into the marketplace too fast." Because I mean, Marvel was putting out a movie. Like it's kind of a good thing they kind of wrapped up their stuff when they did way before the pandemic with Endgame, because we were getting a Marvel movie almost maybe once or twice a month, and
Maybe
I've
not,
yet
maybe not
I've not
quite that often, but
it was
there was some
intense.
frequency.
Yeah, it was pretty
Almost
intense.
every quarter, I bet, more or
Yeah.
less.
Oh, easily, easily. And that's a brand that, when it comes to doing overuse, and I know there's probably a good debate and discussion of dilution versus overuse. I see them the same because if you overuse it, I mean, it's just kind of like adding water to something and thinning it out to the point where it's just water. And
I mean, it becomes background noise.
yeah, so, but other brands that have done that, we talked about was Amazon Fire Phone. They're in retail, but they thought that it would be a good idea to make a phone. Didn't really go over. Matt brought up a point with some of these before I go on to them is that, did it really dilute the brand? Did it really hurt Amazon? Well, obviously not. But I think that Amazon learned a lesson from doing it, that not maybe to do that again, kind of like touching the hot stove, don't you think?
Well, kind of. I mean, it makes you always wonder when these things launch and fail, what were they thinking? And not in a derogatory way, but what I really wonder what their thinking was. Did they somehow think that because they were a internet-based company that makes them fall into the tech category, which means we can do smartphones? Now, granted, they'd done uh, the Kindle by then, but think about it. Amazon started in the book business,
Yeah.
so the Kindle is not unrelated to their core principles. The phone is a true extension of the brand in that it is extended from the home brand. It is loosely tied to the home brand, but doesn't necessarily. It doesn't facilitate directly. I got to be careful how. I mean, if you think this through, it doesn't directly facilitate further engagement with the brand. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? I
Yeah.
mean, I guess if you download if you download their app to their phone, yeah, you do. But it's still a phone. It's made for communicating between people, not communicating primarily outside, interpersonal communication.
Well, it kind of comes back to what we talk about with the why. Why do you get out of bed in the morning and do what you do? And also, why should I buy from you? And a lot of what we're reading through here is starting with a what. So we have this, and this all kind of goes back, and we don't hide it, it goes back to Simonson, how the why, what, and you see that on our site. If you go to nerdbrandagency.com, you can see it. And the way that this works is, and this is a great point for this, is that when you start with a what and try to work into the circle to the why, because it's why, how, and then what. The what is just what you do, it's what you make. The Amazon Fire Phone, that's a what, but that's not really why they got started. It didn't really, it was just kind of like, hey, we're a technology company, we know some folks, let's make a phone. Well,
Exactly.
yeah, it kind of broke that. That's where all of these went off the rails. Did it hurt their brands? Well, no, they're big enough to take that hit. I mean, if you take this giant, massive thing and throw something at it, it'll be sciencey here. Like you can't, like in the movie 2001, or was it 2010? Yeah, it was 2010. Stanley Kubrick's 2010. Jupiter becomes another sun, and human beings are told to stay away. And Jupiter's got all these moons, so it's like, oh, a solar system within a solar system. Yeah, that would totally wreck Earth and the gravity and everything. But Jupiter doesn't have enough mass, no matter how many Jupiters you put into it, to ever become a star. And so at the point is that, what you start out as, you still have that core philosophy about who you are. If you just go out and start grabbing all these whats, you're throwing monkey poo on the wall.
Well, and in a very basic sense, you look at Apple coming out with the iPhone, makes sense because Apple's a company that makes things.
Mm-hmm.
Amazon is not a company that makes things. They're a company that sells things.
Yeah, they're a retailer. I mean, they're even in a different sector. I mean, we did a podcast a while back about the top 5 most valuable brands in the world. Value meaning the money and the revenue they make, not brand equity or brand value. And, you can go back and listen to that podcast, and we talked about they're in a completely different sector than the other 4 that were in that list. Everybody was in that. You had Google, you had, I don't think, yeah, we had Apple in that list. We had Microsoft in that list. Can't remember who the other 4th one was. We had someone, there was another company in there, Mitch, and I'm forgetting. Samsung.
Yeah.
Oh, poor old Samsung. Yeah, Samsung was at number 5. And then Amazon was the number 1 most valuable 5. It was retail. The rest were in tech. So, yeah, it's kind of like, not saying you should stay in your lane. That is not the point. But, be careful in picking what lane you want to get into if you want to,
Right.
if you can hang with it.
And
Harley Davidson.
it kind of makes you wonder, though. You look at Google. I mean, Google has their own phone. Now, I'm not completely up to speed on how successful it is or isn't, but they seem to somehow maybe have succeeded in a way that Amazon didn't.
I think a lot of that is because of education, because their laptops, tablets, all, and I guess they make tablets. I don't know, but I
Yeah,
know a lot.
Chromebooks. They make
Yeah,
Chromebooks.
yeah, the Chromebooks, and I think that that's probably why that helped that a lot for them to continue that. I have a couple friends that have Pixel 2 phones, and they're just Google diehard. And recently, my friend Olga, her husband, he got an iPhone. Was it 12 now? And it was completely like absurd to all of his friends and her that he had done that. He had forsaken the Google.
Huh.
But he wanted to try it. He wanted to try to see, like, what is this like? Because it went back to a more retro looking, well, retro iPhone 5 look,
Mm-hmm.
the sharp edges. But anyways, other areas like Harley Davidson making perfume. We talked about how Harley Davidson, when it comes to apparel, that doesn't seem like a difficult leap in logic to think that, perfume and colognes and aftershaves would probably be somewhere in that line eventually,
Well,
after
because well,
coats and
right,
belts.
right. Well, because at its core, Harley Davidson has become a lifestyle brand. It is a lifestyle. It is a culture.
Right. And I think that's a good podcast to probably come up with later on that we could do, is these lifestyle brands and how they impact people, because um, there's brands that can do stuff, and they're just like, my talking about Jupiter taking all these hits, and it's still never going to become a sun, but it can take a lot of hits. And so it's one of those brands that can do a lot of dumb stuff and things that don't work out, and it's still perfectly okay. On the next episode, we're going to talk about brand evolution, and Harley Davidson is one of the core pieces or brands that we're going to talk about in brand evolution because of what they have to do from evolution of just not of their main product, their bikes. And so looking at their logo and how it's evolved. So that's for another podcast. You can tune in next week for that. To kind of hurry up and get this rounded out, because Mitch, I know you got to go and you're busy. We got Cadbury instant potatoes. Ain't that going to be on the Thanksgiving menu?
I can't believe I never heard of it. Not that I'm a big aficionado of instant potatoes, but it seems like something I would have heard about.
Yeah, yeah. It just doesn't sound right. I don't know. Cadbury Bunny's kind of like, what?
Well, and
I
you have these brands that make a lot of different food products, but let's be honest, Cadbury is a chocolate. They're a chocolatier. They're known for their candy and their chocolate and stuff.
Yeah,
They're not known for their dinner table material.
yeah. Another one is Crystal Pepsi. This is Pepsi's try at, I guess, see-through Cokes. I don't know. I think Sprite and 7-Up kind of had that more market cornered. And Pepsi is a food company, since you brought that up. They are a food company.
PepsiCo.
Yeah. PepsiCo is a food company. It's nothing like you put Pepsi next to Coca-Cola. They're actually, they are competitors, but only in one product line or one extension, I guess you could say. But they are not the same company. One's a food company, and so I guess they could get away with a failure if Coke came out, and we all know famously they did, with a new formula.
New
It
Coke.
it wrecked them. Um, I
Tastes
said that.
like Pepsi.
Yeah. So they really were like, "Oops, never mind about that new formula. We were just pretending." But Pepsi, they could do something like this and get away with it, and it didn't go over at all because people were like, "What?"
It did
So
grab attention.
yeah, it did get the attention they needed. I'm sure it increased sales for sure. People trying a new product because it's still within the line of something you drink. It wasn't like they were, making a car. Like, here's the Crystal Pepsi vehicle. It's a four-door sedan with air conditioning and cruise control.
Well,
Uh,
it just didn't. It was a product that didn't answer a question. The question was, why do I want this?
right. A lot of these don't do that. They don't stop and think like, is there a market for this? Like, that's the first question that I'm not sure was asked. I think they just got a few people together in a focus group and were like, you know what, sounds like a good idea.
Well, it was probably, if memory serves, and maybe it doesn't. It was in that at the beginning of the era where people were worried, talking more about food, additives in food and artificial color and artificial this and
Hmm.
artificial that, and I think they were playing off that whole thing. It's it doesn't have any of that.
Yeah.
It you know um, transparency in its truest sense. But again, we talked about this.
I
We
see
talked,
what you did.
yeah. But we talked about this earlier, and that is that there's a visual aspect to food. We have
Yeah.
certain expectations of what foods look like, and colas historically have always been that fizzy brown, clear, clear brown liquid. Then you
Yeah.
get a cola that's clear. You really wonder if the visual aspect of it had something to do with why people, other than the fact that it didn't answer a question of why. Um, but other than that, maybe I have to wonder if they did any research into if the visual aspect had anything to do with why people didn't buy it.
Yeah.
The visual disconnect.
Yeah. Another one is a Virgin water filtration system. Pretty successful apparently with music, airlines, that kind of a thing. I didn't know they did this, which again is probably why this is on the list of failures. So it's a company that's going to be gutsy and try a thing, but Virgin, it never really got to, like, it's not like Tesla with tequila, with Tesla tequila. Tesla can put their name on tequila. They could probably put their name on a mailbox and people will buy it because it's another life, like you said, lifestyle. It's becoming a lifestyle brand, the lifestyle style brand of today. So Apple, be careful. Tesla may start making phones.
Well,
Uh,
I mean, it's because Tesla is so deeply attached, so deeply rooted in Elon Musk.
yeah,
Tesla is simply a product of Elon Musk, and people have come to expect he's a personality where we've come to expect anything. Nothing
yeah,
is off the table for him.
yeah.
I
He's
mean,
like the
so
Steve Jobs of today. I mean,
right,
you know,
but even more, but in an even more unexpected sense. I mean,
yeah.
his generally speaking, his products are rooted in
He's building starships.
right. He are they're built in forward technological areas, especially where transportation is concerned. Virgin has just, I mean, Richard Branson's an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
He just
Oh,
likes to
yeah.
try new things.
And he's trying to go to space. He's trying to go to space like SpaceX.
And you
Um,
used to hear his name, actually, you used to hear Virgin spoken of more frequently in that area of experimental space than you did Musk. But it's funny how
yeah.
that's flipped.
Yeah, and the weird things that have happened in 2020, which we will probably do a show, just kind of an interrupt show at the end of the year, kind of like looking back at 2020, which I'm sure nobody will like to listen to because they'll be like,
Because who
dude,
wants to?
dude, really, we saw this, we saw the cluster, what that has been this year, but we're in the middle of another space race, and that's, I mean, come on, not my generation has seen this before. Even when you were a kid, when you were born, I mean, that was not a thing. You were kind of busy playing with toys and junk. I mean, you were a little kid. My dad, mom, they're in their 70s and late, mid to almost mid 70s, and so for them, it's sort of like, wow, we're back to going back to the moon. That
Oh, the
that's
space race was everything to me as a kid. I mean, the first 10 years of my life, I wanted to be an astronaut.
yeah,
I could name all the Mercury 7 astronauts, all the Gemini astronauts, the Apollo astronauts. I knew the names of all the capsules, all the vehicles. I mean, I was eat up.
yeah, yeah. So okay, Dr. Pepper barbecue sauce. So I don't.
It doesn't sound horrible.
No, I guess not. I mean, just trying to be funny, but yeah, I every now and then I like to drink Dr. Pepper. I got no problem with them as a product whatsoever. And in fact, they have earned their stripes of making a diet Dr. Pepper that almost tastes exactly like the regular
Yep.
Dr. Pepper.
Yep.
Nobody else has done that. I don't know what they've done. They maybe actually be using sugar, just lying about it. But at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, I could probably see it's got that. I don't know if it's a vinegar. It's got a little bit of a sour, like a little bite. You know what I mean? It's got a little bit of a
I've always said it's a cross between, to me, it's like a cross between between a cherry Coke and a root beer.
yeah. I love the cherry. You put cherry in Pepsi or Dr. Pepper or Coke, and I'm gonna go for that before I go for the normal. That's
Hmm.
just me. So
Hmm.
speaking of Coke, Coca-Cola clothing. This is sort of one that I was kind of like, yeah. I mean, we all kind of like buy products and things that have branding on them. But this one didn't seem to go too far.
Yeah, it's funny. It's because Coke is one of those omnipresent brands that, I mean, it's almost like you walk outside and if you see it in the sky, it seems normal or something. But it's just it's been around for so long and has so pervaded um, our consciousness. But do you want to wear it?
Well, funny thing is, a lot of people do. I mean, when looking this up, you could buy, of course, a brand that's a Coke product that's not too popular with us here in the States is Fanta. I like Fanta. I think Fanta is an excellent orange flavored drink. If you out there don't know what it is,
Well,
uh,
Fanta's got lots of different flavors, though, right? More than just orange.
they,
Like,
yeah, they do. Orange. I mean, I went to the Coca-Cola Museum back in the day in Atlanta. Back in the day, by that I mean like early 2000s. And they have international drinks you can try, and Fanta was there, and I got a hold of like the orange, and I was like, oh, that's good. And then I got a hold of the other ones that are in other countries, like in South America and all that, and I literally thought I took a swig of Listerine. Uh, it was bad. But as far as clothing goes, I mean, Coca-Cola stuff can be quite pricey to collect if it's old.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
T-shirts and things like that. But I brought up Fanta because it was $30 for a Fanta shirt with just the logo Fanta, and I'm kind of like, I'd rather drink the thing and not wear it.
Well, that's
For
what. Yeah,
$30, I can buy a lot of Coke.
I mean,
Or Coca-Cola, I should say, for anybody listening, Coca-Cola. Not I could buy a lot of Coke and snort Coke. I'm just saying Coca-Cola, like drinking. So
it's just funny how it works. And funny is how there's some brands that are on. If it's on a shirt, you don't mind wearing it.
yeah. I mean, that's, we do that with ours. We've got polos and we've got, we'll have t-shirts in the summer. We've got sunglasses right now with our brand on it. But we don't invest heavily in swag in that arena.
Well, I mean, I think with Coke, you just wonder if people maybe just, and not that they necessarily intended this way, Coke that is, but if they just didn't think, I'm not going to wear clothing that's made by you just as a way of promoting your brand.
Yeah, right. And then finally, Windows Phone. Now, I knew a person that had a Windows Phone, and man, he loved it. He didn't want to part from it. I thought the most cool thing about the Windows Phone, was that, like, you have Siri, you have Alexa, and the voices of that. I don't know what Google calls theirs, but they had Cortana. They literally got from Halo Cortana, and Cortana was the AI that you would interact
Yeah,
with
the
on.
interface. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was brilliant. Whoever came up with that and said we should do that, I think that really helped them sell the phone. What?
Maybe they thought there was enough popularity with the Halo franchise that alone could propel the phone.
Well, the Halo franchise to me has always been, and it's kind of like we're going backwards again to that to Sony, and because Sony's a brand that's done so many different things and has escaped and avoided dilution and then just fatigue because they just keep reinventing themselves. Um, it, you know, the, there's not been a lot of success in film with Halo. There's been, but pretty good success, obviously, in the games, and I think there's a new one coming. Um, but the Windows Phone just for me, I never got that Metro look. I never liked that. It's kind of it's kind of getting close to what Apple's doing right now. You got all these big blocks and stuff I've seen with the new iOS. I
Hmm.
wouldn't I have an iPhone 6, so I will have my iPhone 6 until it just stops working, which probably will be next year because they cut off the iPhone 5 and maybe the 5S, I think finally. So yeah, I'm not too far away. I'll have to, funny to say, upgrade to an iPhone SE.
6S.
Yeah, yeah, you'll probably be done in 2023, but so it's coming, kids. Get your new phone. They're gonna make you do it. But anyways, I think that's going to conclude the podcast. I appreciate everybody listening. Sorry for the technical difficulties. You can go to nerdbrandagency.com/podcast and listen to this dumpster fire of a podcast. The pandemic, we were all going to do this in a room. And of course, there's been a sad news, unfortunately, with the spikes in the death rates that are out there now. It's not, I know a lot of people are concerned. We have been closely touched by this nasty little bug ourselves. And it's just, our thoughts and prayers go out to everybody that's dealing with this. So, we're not completely tone deaf about what's going on. I kind of want to tack that on at the end on this second go around of the podcast. But again, thanks everybody for listening. Thanks, Mitch, for coming back in and doing this real quick to kind of clean this up.
Glad to do it.
Hopefully this is the last time we have to do this for today, to do this episode. And then next week, come back, everybody who's listening, and we'll talk about brand evolution. We're going to talk about Harley Davidson. We'll talk about Sony more in depth and their history and the dates and when they evolved and what they did and all of that. So it should be a good conversation. Hopefully we'll uncover some things about Sony that you didn't know. And we'll see you next time. So remember, everybody, keep your nerd brand strong.